Welcome to the second part of our panel discussion today. We're going to continue our conversation, but with a new set of panelists. They are Richard McKinney, the CIO of the Transportation Department, Mark Goodge, the CTO of the Military Health System, Sally Holcomb, the Deputy CIO of the National Security Agency, and continuing our conversation with us is Anthony Robbins, the Vice President of Federal for Brocade, and Judson Walker, the Director of Systems Engineering for Brocade. Welcome and to the discussion again today. First part of the discussion I thought was just fascinating. We talked a lot about cloud and security and network modernization, how they all fit together. So let me turn to Sally to lead us off. Security obviously is what NSA does. We all know that. But you guys also are part of that eyesight program and bringing in the cloud piece. So talk about how you're making that right balance between obviously cyber and modernization.
Well, so it turns out that the very capabilities you seek by having the cloud also enable improved security. You're able to control data at a very granular level and apply rules and policy to the object layer. And that same principle that allows you to correlate big data sets in a cloud environment allows you to also apply controls to that data to ensure appropriate protections, whether it's attributes that the person has matching up with attributes that the data has. So we love that marriage between capability and security and find that that's what is going to enable us to do this information sharing safely.
On one hand, what you talked about was really role-based authentication, really the inside, the back-end infrastructure in some ways. But is that also part of the network modernization piece? Is it because it's modern, if you will, cybersecurity, it's leading to modern infrastructure?
Absolutely. You want to apply the same security principles of attribute-based access control to all pieces of it, whether it's at the desktop layer to ensure that you have the right user acknowledged with the right capability or the right attributes, right down to the protection of the data itself and the framework. Everything gets the same application and control.
Mark, let me jump over to you for a second. You have very similar challenges as NSA, Military Health System, the whole idea of people's personal health records. Give me a sense of how you guys are addressing this very similar challenge.
Well, I'd say very similarly.
Really,
good news. Yeah, it's great news, right? I think coming from the common challenges that you see, the dramatic shift. Everybody, when we talk about cloud, we talk about this, just the principles of, right, applying in the front of your blueprinting of where you're going is those fundamental things from the data layer up. And I think a lot of the people did it in stovepipes before, so that when I needed to share with my mission partner, I couldn't do that without a lot of lift and shift. Now, when we look at that, I would storyboard that ahead of time before we started going into our adoption or our buy trade space to allow us to ensure that we can support what that mission partner needs and vice versa. So it's critical at the data layer to have those attribute controls all the way through to the presentation layer so that we have common feel and look from our spectrums of how we engage and how we support our partners.
I want to pull on one thing. Common look and feel is very important. We talked in the first panel about open standards and really the approach to say we're all going to head down a very similar path, maybe a wide path, but it's got to be within the bounds. Is that difficult because you're dealing with medical devices, you're dealing with a whole set of different challenges than maybe the intelligence community is, though maybe we don't know what you're doing. So tell me a little bit about it.
Well, I'd say from the kind of the common look and feel, I think when the federal CIO a while ago took the cloud-first strategy, my first thought was kind of the common www land, right? So HTML5 is a rendering. I can apply that protocol to almost anything that's out there, including smartphones, right, desktops, but it's all about the movement of data. So from our perspective, what was the easiest way to take advantage of a protocol that's emerging or has emerged, this was years ago, to allow us to really start dictating where the future is going from that protocol and then be part of that visualization to ensure that most people very easily, and we saw the explosion of the internet because it was simple and easy to use. And so we talk about user experience and really kind of breaking down the variables to says, really, what does that user need to do? And back to the blueprinting and the storyboarding. So what is the engagement of that? Because in the back end, we can shift the data, the things that make it work to give that common look and feel for that mission partner, for that user experience, for the data they need.
Richard, let me turn to you. Something that really resonated with you from that first panel was regarding the collaboration piece and bringing together this complex set of agencies to kind of, again, go down the same path. Talk a little bit about what transportation is doing from your perspective to take the network modernization piece, the cyber piece, and get everyone kind of in that good right direction.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Since I came to DOT, one of the challenges I've had is that I don't have haven't up till now had a very good and I don't have an as-is blueprint of our network. Our network was, as Jennifer in the first section talked about, how she had 17 agencies and the network was sort of just the compilation of all those. That's the same thing at DOT. It's as if we built a house and every room got designed and built by someone unbeknownst to the rest of the builders. And then someone's, at some point said, well, this is our house, let's guard it and take care of it. And we don't have this blueprint. So what we've done is I hired an engineering firm, a network engineering firm that's not trying to sell me anything, but just somebody who is pounding our network and sort of mapping it out so that we will have that blueprint. And then as a part of the CDM phase one, we're going to discover what the endpoints on that network. So between the CDM effort of discovering what's on the network and the engineering effort to map the network out, what we hope to come out with is a basic understanding of our construct. And you can't defend what you don't understand. You can't defend what you don't have a good inventory of. And so that's the approach we've taken. And it's, so some of it's technical, but there's also a governance piece to that too. And getting everybody to realize that we have to do what's in our common interest, and that everybody on the network is dependent upon the rest of the network. Then you can't be on a network and turn your back on what other entities are on it and expect to be secure. And that goes to what is on our network. Building maintenance systems and building security systems, and everything that's on the network impacts everyone else. And so we're working hard to get that as-is blueprint.
Anthony, I'm one of the few people who gets excited when we talk as-is and 2B. Enterprise architecture just brings me back to my old days of 3 clicks to service and don't swallow the ocean in one gulp. But talk a little bit about what you're hearing from Mark, from Richard, from Sally.
Well, I think there's two points that resonate for me. So first of all, if we were going to design a network today and we were going to target the year 2020 or 2025, we would never design a network that looks like what we have today. Never do that. And secondly, foundationally, the network that we have in place today, it's the most complex and oldest part of the enterprise in the federal government. So we as industry partners look at this network and we look at it from perspective of we have to assist in the modernization of this infrastructure so that we can serve this great nation's warfighters and citizens. And there's a bunch of things that we can do, and I think more rapidly with the budgets that exist, right? I think we can make today's network, I think we can make it faster, I think we can make it more secure, and we could do it for less money a lot faster than the path that we're on. So those are some of the areas where we're trying to assist the federal government.
Now, Justin, let me turn to you. When we talk about enterprise architecture, I'm one of the few ones that gets really excited, as is 2B. But one of the things I heard Richard talk about was better, faster, cheaper, which is hard. We've seen that's a big challenge for government, for any organization, really. From an engineering perspective, when someone gives you that as is, how do you take them to the 2B that's better, faster, and cheaper?
Oh, yeah, Jason. I think Sally made a great point earlier about the controls and the data. And the collaboration between the two. And the infrastructure can provide an extra level of intelligence to make that happen. Because one of the things that we have found is that when it comes to a security strategy, it's really based on a lot of point products. And those point products are strategically placed in various environments. But the question is, how do I take those point products and elevate them to a higher construct that works cooperatively with the controls and the data? So you're kind of looking at one view and be able to define policy once and apply that policy from the device to the data center where all data resides in transit or at rest. And I think to do that requires a standards-based approach from an infrastructure standpoint, number one. And then number two, leveraging kind of the evolution of the software-defined movement to provide you those centralized controls and movement that our mission requires, our commanders require, and our users require from an enterprise services standpoint.
Sally, is that really kind of what you guys are doing in NSA the way Justin described it, which is really focusing it from one point of, instead of all these other endpoints that are out there, you're really bringing them all together to say, okay, this is the policy, this is how the policy is going to be applied broadly?
That's the goal.
That's the goal. It's always the
You've
goal.
got to work your way there.
Yes. And from Mark, your perspective, I'll jump in on this discussion because you have again, similar issue. Big network, a lot of things that are happening. how do you ensure that policy is being spread out as part of this network modernization process?
Sure. During some of our, the stand-up of the Defense Healthcare Agency was really brought the Army, Navy, and Air Force into conformity so that we can all design to the blueprints that the DoD has given us for their joint information environment. That allows us to look at that adopt, buy, build. So really it's just applying the kind of the right schema right to the areas and activities for our mission partner engagement or what we do for the larger department. So I agree with Sally. So for me, for data, right, I apply those use cases on the data, those attributes to the data. I might use a vendor or provider, whether it's cloud, on-prem, off-prem, or in a hybrid mode, to allow us to take advantage of that virtualization or what they do best to ensure what we do best as a government oversight to ensure the mission continues, then we meet the objectives both financially, technically, and really from the business support elements. So we're right in line with that. I think you're going to see, and you probably have, right, a monumental shift from where it used to be siloed and isolated to abstraction layers for sharing of data, information, and dynamics for sure, and we see a lot of dynamics for that, and we've invested a lot for what we did for research and development to look at a personal, private, public cloud and what that would look like for that lacticity. So before we go into engagements, right, we have a good working model that we can instantiate to the enterprise at large.
I think that's a great point to stop on for a sec, because I think the shift you're talking about we can pick up in the second part of the panel. We have to take a break. You're listening to the panel discussion, a 360-degree view of federal network security, sponsored by Brocade on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM.